Hi, everybody, and welcome back. We have a very interesting episode today, slightly different to our other ones because we're going to be talking quite a lot about music and music management. And we have a very interesting guest. His name is Atamian, which is a tough name to pronounce. So, in his American business, he is called Jack Price. And Jack and I are going to talk about a variety of interesting concepts around the difficulties of being a classical performer in today's day and age, or the age of Spotify. What are the steps that you can take to become a well-known and booked musician? And we talk a little bit about his experience winning recitals. For example, in 1975, he won the 50th anniversary Naumburg competition at Carnegie Hall. He was 19, one of only two at that time being that young. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this fascinating and sometimes cantankerous talk about the music industry. And okay, so why don't we start with a little bit of your background, because it's quite a fascinating one. And yeah, I'm sure we'd love to hear a bit about how you started out in music and then your move into managing other artists.
Right. Well, one Christmas, I guess I was about 9, my mother heard Liberace on the TV or something. And she didn't know, these Armenian parents, they're like, they're into money, they're into the, substantial things in life. Art is not exactly the Armenian way. So anyway, they were typical Armenians. Actually, they were both models in their former, state. And so she wanted me to play the piano because my father had me doing judo and baseball and all that. So she bought a Baldwin like fun machine kind of thing, a chord organ, a very small keyboard. So I guess I started banging on it, and they said, "Oh yeah, I think he has talent." And so they took me to some local guy in Tempe, Arizona, where we were living in Scottsdale, and he said, "Oh, your son is, very precocious." And I wonder to this day what's the basis for that, because I couldn't read music at that point.
Yeah.
It sounds pretty stupid. So anyway, one thing led to another, and 2 years later, I made my debut with the Phoenix Symphony. So it's fast. It was fast, and I would say, yeah, I was a prodigy, but much more prodigious in the sense of interpretation and feeling the music, very prodigious. Physically, it took me a while till I was about 16 or 17 to really come into my own mechanically, or technically, you might call it. I don't really call it that, but I had a physical affinity to the keyboard, but it had to be brought out. You know, it was much more of a feeling thing when I was young. Not to say that I couldn't play the notes. I'm just saying that it developed much later. And so that's how I started. And then I started touring pretty much at 11, in the States. I would just write to universities and say, "Hey, I'm a pianist. Can I come and play for nothing?" That kind of thing. That's how I built my brand. You talk about branding. I built my brand differently than most people in classical music. I just wrote in my teens to universities and colleges and say, "Look, I want to play this program." And it was a pretty demanding program. And they'd invite me. They sometimes paid my airfare. Sometimes they would give me a little fee. Sometimes they'd put me in a hotel. And that's how, when I won the Naumburg at 19, the name Atamian or Atamian was already branded. So that's what you need to do, not win a contest. You got to brand the name before you win the contest, in my opinion. So
So, so,
that's
so
kind of
you,
different.
so you were basically an overnight success in 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, you might say that because Associated Press carried a story to all the dailies in the world, Australia, and people would call me and say, "Hey, we just saw your picture in the, Saturday evening, blah blah blah, in England or wherever." And I'd say, "Wow, that's fast, because I just won this thing like 3 days ago." So apparently UPI did me a lot of good. And somehow the name Atamian stuck, but not as much as when I did The Rite of Spring. That's what really nailed it. So my
Yeah,
brand came, I was the crazy Armenian Stravinsky guy at that point.
yeah. So again, I joked about being an overnight success in 10 years. I mean, you'd been
Yeah, that's
building,
not true.
building,
That's not true.
yeah.
Yeah, of
No,
course
well,
not.
I'm by
Yeah.
building up to it over quite a few years. So you didn't just erupt from nowhere. You'd been building up your
No,
brand,
no.
building up your reputation, and
Yeah.
that was just sort of the pinnacle at that point. Now,
Yeah.
from that position, so having won that competition, which obviously was very good PR and hopefully a bit of cash as well, probably not a
Oh,
huge
yeah.
amount,
Not
but
in those days, not in
yeah,
75. Yeah. I mean, it was something like 10,000, maybe 8,500. I can't even remember, to be
yeah.
honest.
But how did your trajectory take off from there? Did you manage yourself? Did your parents
No.
manage you? How did this work?
Oh, no. I immediately signed with the architect of Columbia Artist Management, William Judd. He and Arthur Judson invented Cami, or Columbia Artists. You must have heard of Columbia Artists.
Yeah,
They went bankrupt 3 years ago, so they're no longer
yeah,
during COVID, unfortunately. But
hmm.
I was with, not first with Cami, I was with the Judd Concert Bureau, which was Bill Judd got sick and tired of Cami, even though he invented it, and he left and took Andre Watts and Earl Wild and Rudolph Serkin, some very big names, Big Bird from Sesame Street, and Michael Rabin. And then I arrived in '75, actually after Rabin died. So, it was a critical time. Hurock was folding because they had a fire or something, and then they turned into ICM and Shaw Concerts, which I later signed with both of them. So I went with the big boys, but I was not satisfied. And that's why we're having this conversation. So I invented my own thing, kind of, and joined up with the North American Artists Foundation, hence Price Attractions, which is the management arm of the North American Artists Foundation.
Now I've found that my father is an author, and my grandfather is a very famous Afrikaans author. So any Afrikaans person listening will know my grandfather.
Mm-hmm.
But when it came to my father writing books, he's a fantastic writer, but
Mm-hmm.
publishing agencies tend to have favorites, and they're also quite poor at marketing sometimes.
Right.
They sometimes hit it lucky with a hit or with a book that does well. And self promotion obviously is a key part, and sometimes, and to your point, promoting yourself is a better route to go, or to go with somebody who's got a real passion in that particular area. How
Yeah.
how have you used your experience in your own performing career and in your own experience with labels and publishers to help your business?
Well, I try to tell my artists that the greatest help they can do for themselves is to create career milestones. That's what I learned. In other words, what's going to separate you from the pack, from the rest of the boys, or girls? The point is, there are too many artists, and there have always been too many artists, but now we have millions, just millions. I heard a weird fact the other day that there were 24 million pianists in China alone. Now, I don't know if that's true, and they're all trying to be Lang Lang. So, the brand.
Yeah,
And so, hey, go for it. I don't know if that's true, but there are a lot of artists. I mean, just a plethora. And these buyers, they have their choice, and the buyers don't really, it's not like they know the difference between Yefim Bronfman and, you know, Yuja Wang. They don't know the difference between these names. They
yeah,
just know what sells. So they're going to engage a name they know. That's the key thing I tell the artists. Your brand is not your tone. Your brand is not what you look like. Your brand is not your repertoire. Your brand is your name. If your name is John Smith, you're stuck with that unless you want to change it. For me, Atamian seemed to be a good name, and it just seemed I think it was a lucky stroke. I didn't have a huge career because I didn't have any money, but I made a living, which is something to say in this business.
Yeah,
You know, I supported my family and whatnot, but it was a significant career, and that's what I try to get artists to realize. The days of Van Cliburn and all this stuff, that's gone. Even Yo-Yo Ma is not Van Cliburn. That was a sensation that, like you say, it was a stroke of luck. I mean, he kissed Khrushchev on the lips, and the rest is history, right? You know,
yeah,
I mean, it's just unbelievable. I mean, won the Tchaikovsky, and then et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But it wasn't the prize; it was the political climate at the time that propelled Van into that stratosphere of the pantheon of piano, no, to the point where there was no other pianist but Van Cliburn,
yeah.
at one point.
Well, Well, you made the point of your folks listening to Liberace. I literally was
Yeah.
going to joke about saying one of my favorite pianists, is Liberace.
Well,
So you brought you just to play with you, but I
mine
think
isn't. I don't like Liberace, and I met him several times, and I don't like him as a person, although he's not with us any longer. So,
yeah,
no, there are other people I would really like. Van Cliburn was a great guy, for
yeah.
example. Wonderful,
But
humble.
but let's look at brands and your point about I don't doubt that there are 24 million pianists, potential pianists in China, because there's tremendous talent. There's a great push by government to push culture and
Yeah,
education.
sure there is.
But
Yeah.
but if we look at what separates performers from everyone else. If we look at the likes of Liszt, we look at Rubinstein, we look
Yeah.
at Jascha Heifetz, they were
Yeah.
very good. So they had that, but they had a flair. They had something a little bit extra. If we look at Liszt, it was his clothing,
Oh,
it was wild
yeah. I mean,
temperament, it was the
yeah.
way that he electrified audiences. He played, I'm sure, a lot of wrong notes, but he played it very loudly and extravagantly, and possibly to audiences who weren't terribly
But
sophisticated. But he had he had a brand, he had something that differentiated him versus tone.
yeah, right. Well, what Liszt also had was humility. He brought back the Hammerklavier. He promoted other composers like Chopin. I mean, he was so humble. And they make him look like, this ladies' man and everything. He wasn't like that at all. I mean, he had basically two women in his life. If you read the Walker trilogy of books, that Canadian guy that wrote the Liszt books, very interesting. I couldn't put it down. But Liszt had a flair. Liszt was phenomenal, but he also was striking looking. He
Mm.
had that. And the myths began about him with the women, and they said that he would play something really hard and stop in the middle of it and go rescue a woman in the audience that fainted. Now, that woman could have been paid to faint. I don't know. But anyway, that's a story. These legends just creep up. I'm not known at all. And I mean, like I said, I had a significant career. There are all kinds of rumors about me all over the internet that I grease the keys with shoe polish. It's nonsense. You know, Someone said that in Champaign Urbana, Illinois. I did Liszt actually number 2 concerto, and they said that I greased it with shoe polish. It's not true. I mean,
Yeah,
I
I
don't
mean,
need to lie about it. There's no shoe polish in the piano. You know.
yeah, I mean, it's
So
it's not something I would use to disparage somebody, to be honest, with shoe polish. But let's talk about uh, building artists in the age or music management in the age of Spotify. Now, I've one of the problems I've had with music and music labels is obviously you have one or two big stars who make absolute
yeah,
horrific amount of money, and then you've got actual really good artists in penury. But I think
yeah,
this is something that has happened throughout history. Most musicians didn't expect to be multimillionaires. They loved their craft, they loved playing the piano, the banjo, whatever it
yeah,
was, and they'd go and play at their local bar. They would, like Bach, write music for church every week, be performing every week, and make a living. I think
right.
a lot of people have are thinking that the music industry is like becoming president. You can get to the top and you can make a fortune, and it doesn't seem to work like that anymore. And especially with Spotify, when you're getting a tiny, sliver of a cent every time somebody plays your track. How does one make money as an artist now? How are you
Well,
saying to the folks that you are managing to have a livable career?
well, first of all, I'll attack that question in the recording industry. You're not going to make money if you're a development artist, which is below the Yo-Yo Ma type cachet. Anything below Van Cliburn and all that stuff is development, not in talent, but in name, in brand. So if the brand has to be developed, you're not going to make any money in records. I don't care if you record for Deutsche Grammophon. The only way you're going to make money is selling those recordings at your concerts. And that's not easy because there are not that many opportunities to play these days. You have to really dig for concerts for artists. It's post COVID and the business itself, and post 2008, when we had that horrible financial crisis, that really did something to, especially conductors. I mean, they were losing their jobs, they were cutting their salaries. I used to have a roster of only 55 conductors. I never had any soloists. Don't ask me why, it just worked out that way. I had to go totally different in 2010 and accept all kinds of soloists, singers, and everything because the conductors just didn't have it. They didn't have the money. And my model is different, or our model. Unlike Cami, they have to make money. We're a nonprofit, and so we just charge for the work, and that's it. And to get the work done, they have to pay for it, but it's nominal compared to the money we're talking about, with big names like Joshua Bell and Yujo Wang. They have millions behind them. And nobody, I mean, I know some of the stories. I know where the bodies are buried, but there's no need to go into that. The point is they have it and you don't, you see. So if you don't have those millions, you're extremely limited with branding yourself and getting yourself out there. And therefore, you're going to be limited in concert engagements and recordings and everything. But forget the recording industry and Spotify. You're not going to make money that way. There's no way. The internet just stole that. I mean, I can give you a very good example. Okay, so there's a recording of my Brahms first piano concerto, and it's only a digital download. So listen to this. You can go to Amazon and they will rip the sound from that digital download and make you a CD for $17, complete with artwork. I don't have a CD. There was no CD of that recording. And I've never seen a cent. It's all piracy. I mean, they just rip the artists off. It's that simple.
Yeah, so it's a tough industry to go in, and I think you really need a passion now if you're going to be a classical pianist.
Oh, yeah, you have to. Like, if I was to say, I mean, if I had to do it now, I would not do it. I don't care how much talent I have or whatever. I would never record the Rite of Spring. I would never record the Beethoven sonatas. I would never do anything. I would go into something like real estate.
well, I,
it's
well,
too
I,
it's too hard. But the fact is, artists today are more. They're so passionate about their work. They will not stop. I mean, and I admire that. I admire that they want to play. Okay, play. I
yeah,
chose to retire 17 years ago. This is my choice. It's not a referendum on their playing. It's just my choice, you know.
yeah.
And I had a
So,
lot of reasons.
well, I was accepted for opera school, and at the same
Really?
time, yeah, and at the same time, I had the offer of working at one of my dream companies as a marketing person.
Hmm.
And I weighed up eating, having a family, or being on the road and having a concert during Easter and Christmas. And it was
Hmm.
quite an easy decision because financially, and secondly, I just wasn't in that 0.1% of talent. I knew internally that I wasn't the best in the world, and I would never, unless I tricked my way to the top, get there. So I gave up real early on my a career. I sing in the choir and I've done all sorts of interesting things. But I think those who have the passion and continue with it deserve to be supported somehow, especially if they have talent. So it's
Yeah,
great, yeah, seeing
they are
the kind of
very
work that you're
adamant
doing.
about, yeah, they're very adamant about their talent. I mean, people, the conversations that I have with artists are quite incredible. They really believe in themselves and they really want it. So, hey, as long as they're credentialed, they deserve the marketing that we offer. That's what I
So
say. There's
so
no
let's
favoritism.
so let's talk about the services that you offer. How do you take somebody who's got passion and talent and make them succeed in the current market?
There's only one way. If you don't have $5 million to $10 million to blitz the industry with it, buying all the orchestras and then hoping that the reviews are great and being invited back for real fees. If you can't do that, you got to do it the poor man's way, which is precept upon precept, one phone call at a time. That's what we do. We call people. We call decision makers. We call people that actually book talent, the buyers, we call them. And they are simply the music directors and the artistic administrators. No one else buys talent. The executive director does not get involved with programming with their musical map. We're going to do Brahms second this year, and what big name can we get to do that? That's how it works. Okay, so these guys have a musical map. We want to do this concerto. What big name can we get? If we can't get a big name, let's get a friend, someone that we've already worked with that I know can play the Brahms. The third category, which most people fall into, are contest winners and development artists. And unfortunately, that's where the calling has to come in. You got to call and brand that name. You got to pronounce the name perfectly on the phone, and you got to send the material during the call, the sizzle. They click on the sizzle, they get an image, they get all their deliverables, they get their Spotify, their iTunes, their upcoming engagements, their past engagements, their critical acclaim, their bio, short bio, long bio, whatever they want, YouTube videos or a YouTube channel, and unlimited MP3s. We offer this to all of the artists. They have a real website within our website. So when they see that and you're talking about them, it's like a 1-2 punch. They get an audio experience on the artist, meaning your voice talking about them, and they get a visual looking at their stuff. That's the only way to do it. You've got to brand them. And it takes about 25 calls, probably, to the Boulder Philharmonic to get them to even remember the name.
So basically, these artists have to be pre-packaged in order to sell them. So you can't just be a great pianist and call up
No,
the Philharmonia and say, "Hi, I'd like to play XYZ."
they don't care.
You've got to have the whole package
Yeah, they
ready.
don't care. They don't care how great any. First of all, they only care about the name. Do I know this name? The answer is either yes or no. If it's yes, you've got a chance at an engagement. That doesn't mean a definite one. You could be put on a what I call a consideration list, a short or a long list. Short being eminent, long could take 5 to 10 years, you know, on a conductor's list because he has everybody he owes favors to all these people, all these people he promised engagements to. And so you got to wait in line for an engagement. But
But
the, yeah, go ahead.
is this a problem of there being too many schools promoting too many people to
Absolutely.
be conductors and artists who shouldn't actually be artists?
In the field. Yeah, I was artist in I'm so glad you brought that up. The real enemy here is the music school, not to vilify them, but to identify the enemy. And the enemy is the plethora of artists and who produces those. Well, you don't just produce yourself. Even I, who was self taught, I studied with George Bollett, I studied with Claudio Arrau, I studied with John Perry, a number of people, Reginald Stewart from England. I mean, but when I say I was self taught, I threw most of that away and I developed my own thing. And if you have something critical to say, like I do, musically and verbally, then you can win. If you have nothing to say and all you can do is play the notes, I'm sorry to say everybody can play the notes some way, somehow. It's how you play them, of course.
Yeah.
So it's very difficult to have a career these days, but more and more people want that career. And so we developed a program that gives every development artist that is credentialed and is interested in what we do, might benefit from what we do, they get the marketing. I don't play favorites. I don't go around saying, William Capell or Emil Gilels is my favorite pianist, because it doesn't matter to the guy that you're selling. They want to know what you think of them. And you might not think they're your favorite, but if they're credentialed and they can play, they deserve the marketing. That's what I think. I know
Mm.
you might think that's not good because the music schools are grinding these people out daily, and many of them, I'm not going to say all of them, sound the same. I have to say. The artistry level today is not, in my opinion, what it used to be. Most people play the same music, trained the same way, and they play the same way. Most of them. It's hard to find something really, truly unique and personal. It's hard.
Mm.
So that would be a winner if you could find that. And so it's difficult. And I'll tell you who I like later. But, the point is, this is a difficult, treacherous course, having a career in classical, or I would call it serious music. Even a film composer, serious music. Jazz artist, serious music. Now, if you're talking about rap or something, I'm sorry, but I don't consider that serious. It's surely entertainment to some crowds, you know. But the point is, serious music is hard to sell. And there are too many people vying for the same piece of tiny slice of cheese. You've got millions of people going after the cheese. Now, in Hollywood, at least, there's more opportunity, but then again, you've got millions of actors and actresses and so on and so forth. You have the same problem in any career, but there are more opportunities in certain careers, you know.
So, having said that, and I think I agree with your point about the music schools churning out people, and some of them should never have been churned out in the first place. And I'm sure not everyone coming out of Juilliard or places like that should
Yeah.
get a
Like I,
place, even though some of them are really good. And
no, it's like I told you, I was at the University of Michigan, and I don't mind saying this. They can criticize me all they want. I was there 5 years, and they kept saying, "Oh yeah, we need to pass this person." I said, "No, you need to flunk this person. This person was a night guard in a building somewhere and decided they wanted to play Mozart 310, the A minor sonata. Well, okay, this person had no business playing that Mozart sonata, and when she came to her qualifying recital, she completely fell on her rear end, and they still passed her to give the recital. You're exactly right. There's so many people in the industry, mediocrity, that have made it because they have the money and they were encouraged at a music school to continue. No, the criticism should be levied at a very high level early. No, you don't have it. No, you do. Like you said, you thought you weren't going to be the greatest or whatever, and you decided against it. Okay, there are very few self-effacing people like that. Okay, you exposed your inner thoughts there when you said that. Very few people do that. I'm self effacing when I play. If anyone has watched or heard me play, my heart's right there in front of you on the stage. It's everything is born. I bear it all. I don't hide. There's no, yeah, but many people hide. They're playing in music, their thoughts. They say things that they think people want to hear. They don't say what they really are thinking. Like Anthony Hopkins said in a movie once, people don't tell you what they're thinking. They just make sure you don't succeed. They don't,
yeah,
no, he said they don't let you advance, but they're not going to say you're horrible or something. They could be jealous and you could be phenomenal and you still wouldn't advance. There's jealousy. There's all kinds. But yes, the music schools are the culprits, even though I don't want to vilify them because they have to make money also. And the recruiting is down, of course.
Yeah. Well, working in the education industry myself, I work at a vocational school. So I
Hmm.
deal with very hands-on, activities in
Right.
digital marketing. And I think the general education environment has gone from where you are trying to extract the best out of society and the smartest and make them even smarter and add value to humanity, to just allowing everyone in. And I think the traditional concept of universities and education has been completely diluted now. So we are not
Oh,
getting
it's just,
the right people. It's mean and nasty. Yes, you won't be able to get into the degree that you want, but not everyone has the right or deserves to get a degree or deserves to get a master's. And it's
yeah,
bad. It's bad for us, and it's a money making
it's
game.
all
I think
money.
in the
Yeah,
states.
it's all money. Just follow the money. Almost
Yeah,
everything is about the money,
yeah,
almost.
yeah,
So if money is the common denominator, you're in trouble.
yeah. So
You know,
let's talk about, you're a young artist, you've got talent or you've got self belief, and you want to be the next Van Cliburn.
Mhm.
What are the steps that you, as that artist, need to do before they come to you?
Well, they have to be packaged, like you said earlier. They can't just be a phenomenal artist. They have to have something to sell. Like someone said to me, oh, they all say this. Jack, don't you have your contacts? You've played with Joanne Falletta and Leinsdorf and Lauren Moselle and Eduardo Mata and blah, blah, blah. I mean, you should be able to just slip me into a slot. What they don't realize is, yeah, I'm known to many of the buyers. Some are too young now because I'm 67. So the problem is, do I have a name to sell? They're not going to take Richie Atamian's or Jack Price's word for it. They want to go. I told something to Jerry Schwartz once, and he goes, "What's that name?" And I've played with him many times. He's not going to just take my artist because he's my artist. That's the fallacy. You have your contacts, just fit me into a slot. Does not work that way. They have to know the name or they have to have the money because then you can build the name with the auspices, with the series, etc. It's very complex, actually. Okay,
Would it make
it's
sense?
we don't have time to get into the complexities of how a career is made, but basically follow the money.
Yeah. I liked your point about having milestones. I think that's very good for any personal development as well, thinking about where you should be at XYZ stage. But
Yes.
I'll just look at my career. I was in South Africa and I realized that my career ceiling was going to be quite low. So I moved to Nigeria to go
Hmm.
and start or set up a
That's
research
interesting.
company there with an advertising agency. It was the last thing I wanted to do, but it was the best decision I've ever made. It was a very awful experience in the beginning. It was so different to what I'd expected, but the friends I'd met, the different cultures I got to understand, and it broke me out of a mold of just being South African centric.
Hmm.
I saw that you had performed in the USSR when it was the
Yes,
USSR. You've
I did
performed
in,
around
in
the
the
world.
Soviet Union. Yeah.
Is it not worth some of these artists who are looking at the US market to perhaps go to smaller countries or countries that will actually be open or receptive to American new
Well,
American artists with talent?
well, yeah, it's biblical. Just like no, I mean, no man is a prophet in his own land. So
Yeah,
that's taking that scripture and really exaggerating it. In other words, the old saying here in the States, if you're an American artist, go to Europe and make a name and come back and you'll be famous. Well, it's not that simple. That also involves money. But the point is, sometimes you can't convince people around you because of jealousy and other things that you're good. So you got to go somewhere else where nobody knows you and they have no prejudices against you or your name or the way you look and you play great or whatever and you get great reviews and then you can come back to your hometown, Phoenix, Arizona, and, shove it up their nose, I guess.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's not that easy. These are axioms and sayings and rules that have so many facets to them. I mean, when Jesus said that, it's not that simple. Okay.
Yeah.
You're not a prophet in your own land. Well, yeah, we know your own parents sometimes think, oh, are you still playing the piano? Oh my gosh. Like, you know, I mean, they make all kinds of derogatory. You've got to have a leather exterior, more like a rock exterior to keep all that negativity out and forge ahead. And that's
Yeah.
what I see in artists today. They want to forge. They don't care how many negative things. There's one spirit nothing is crushed. The artist wants to be an artist. Okay, I quit 17 years ago. That's not a good example. But everybody else that I know would never quit. I don't know of anybody that would have done what I did, which also brings up a crazy question, like, why on earth did you do it? Well, like I said, I'm not a referendum on everyone else's career. I mean, if you want to play, play. Just like Elvis said, if it's too dangerous to say, sing. Okay? Yeah. I mean, I like that. If you can't talk about it, sing about it. So, this negative stuff, no one has the right to tell anybody they shouldn't go into being a concert artist. It's up to that concert artist to decide, like you did, or I did, or whatever.
So we've had a couple of negative points here. Let's try and bring it up a notch in terms of positive territory. What are you seeing as a positive change in the classical music industry now? What things can new artists or potential artists expect
Well,
that
I
should keep
think
them excited?
after Corona, I believe that the development artist was being considered more often than the big names. In other words, people were running out of money. The Pueblo Symphony is going broke or whatever. I'm just making all this up. And they want to bring in unknowns and promote the unknowns instead of paying huge bucks to Itzhak Perlman or Shlomo Mintz or Joshua Bell or wherever your flavor of the month, Leela Josefowitz, and build the unknown into a local hero. I think it can be done. To be honest with you, I think that's a very good thing since Corona, if it's true. But I've noticed they're booking a lot of big names still. I mean, Yuja Wang and Daniil Trifonov and Lang Lang, they get most of the piano dates. I mean, Yefim Bronfman, maybe. Um, you've got a handful of people playing lots of gigs. Okay, so that leaves less for the development artists, but they are considering short, long list development artists more often now than they were before the coronavirus thing hit. I've noticed that. They're more open to it because of money.
Yeah, that's always a consideration for these folks. And I've seen a lot of, I mean, luckily I'm in Norway, so the government sponsors quite a lot of activities. I mean, we're singing the Brahms Deutsche Requiem in
Yeah,
December,
great
which is a
piece.
wonderful piece. And we've got players from the Oslo Philharmonic, we've got international soloists and some of the best soloists in Norway singing for us. But that's
Mm-hmm.
because the state is helping us
Well, yeah,
supporting local
it's
artists and by bringing in the best.
yeah. I mean, here in the States, the National Endowment of the Arts is completely defunct. No more grants for orchestras and stuff. Whereas in Mexico, everything's paid for. They don't care how many
Yeah,
people come to the concert. China too, right? I mean,
yeah,
you can have 200 people in the most glorious hall in China. No one cares because, like you say, it's in the fiber of the politics. They promote cultural advancement. You know, whereas in the States, I mean, a banker might buy 40 tickets to the Paducah Symphony and not even fill one of them. He'll just buy them to get them off their back. I mean,
yeah.
again, a negative thing. I'm sorry. I'm dwelling too much. No, here are the positive things about this industry right now. More than ever, anyone can do anything. The trouble, the offshoot, Flip side is there are too many people that are doing whatever they want to do, meaning
Yeah.
on the internet. Like you say, you can flip a switch and you have desktop publishing, you can produce your own CD, but everybody's doing it. So I still say the number one thing is uniqueness, even before money. It has to be truly unique for it to be a big career. Now, if you just want, to play a little bit, and many people do, they're not looking for big careers, then that's good. They're in good shape because they can have a very nice career without too much worry about branding. But if if you're one of those 24 million in China that want to be Lang Lang, it's tough. Lang Lang had a lot going for him. You know,
Yeah.
Gary Graffman for one. His teacher.
So yeah, I mean, I suppose having somebody like Nadia Boulanger as your
Yeah,
piano coach could get you in a couple of doors, and that I
their
suppose is still
connections. Their
connections.
connections.
Exactly.
Not their prowess. Just because Boulanger was great at what she. No, she knew people.
But I've also seen on uh, probably 50% of the pianists that I followed, they've got her listed as they
Oh
had
yeah,
one lesson with her. So that's
I
so
know.
she's a fantastic brand to have as well. So it's also that I think the progression as an artist, you have to tick certain boxes and say you had Boulanger, you had XYZ,
It's like the
and
Lenny.
that's
It's like the Lenny thing. If Leonard Bernstein looked sideways at someone, that person would say they studied with him. It's true. Oh, I had
exactly.
a conductor said, "Hey, do you know what this is?" I said, "No." "Oh, that's Lenny's watch." And you know what I said? I said, "I truly hope it helps you in the concerto we're about to play." I mean, come on.
Yeah,
What a thing to tell the soloists right before they're walking out. It's kind of crazy.
yeah,
But I think there's a lot of positive stuff going on in this industry. And, you just have to fight for it. That's the
yeah.
other thing. Is there any fight left in you to do it? You have to want it. The desire has to be there. You said passion. That's it. If there's no desire, nothing's going to help. It's like Ray Kroc said, the guy that franchised McDonald's, right? The only thing that matters is perseverance. There are lots of talented people. There are a lot of wealthy people. There are a lot of this kind of people, good looking, bad looking, whatever. But if you keep doing it, keep persevering, stick to itiveness, you're going to succeed eventually.
That perseverance is a theme that comes up and up the whole time when I'm speaking to really successful folks.
Yeah.
It's why I joked in the beginning about being overnight success in 10 years. Google was an overnight success in 10 years. Tesla was an overnight success in 10 years. They weren't an overnight success. It took
No, of
a
course not.
decade of work and perseverance to get there, and sticking through
Well,
it, even
that's because
when
that's
it
because
didn't look like it was going to succeed. Yeah.
the reason they think it's an overnight success, it's when they hear of the name for the first time, they go, "Oh wow, who's this?" Well, they've been working hard. You
Yeah.
know, it's just
So
like the
for
guy
your
that played Elvis last year. What's his name? Austin Butler. Nobody knew this guy was a sensational performance by any stretch of the imagination. And he came out of nowhere. Well, that's not true. He's made movies before and he was being cultivated, and the director cast him, and that's it. The rest is
yeah.
history. I
So I
mean,
think
it's hard.
for your potential customers, who we should hopefully send a couple to you who've got some talent, you've got to expect that this is not going to be an overnight
That's what I say all the time.
success. You're going to have to take a couple of years of building your profile, doing the smaller gigs, building up your social media channels, making sure you get people listening to you on Spotify and
Yeah.
YouTube, and then
Hits. Right.
perhaps you'll get that lucky break, and it just comes from left field sometimes, and sometimes it might never happen.
Well, the problem is most artists, unfortunately, naively want a quick fix. There is no quick fix in this industry. Unless back to the money thing. And by the
Yeah.
way, even if you spend 5 to 10 million, you could fail. That's not a guarantee. That means you have a chance at a career, a big career. Okay. But the poor man's way is probably more solid, just one call at a time, and just keep going, keep doing it. It's the consistency that matters. Okay.
I've got one last thing I want to chat to you about, and
Sure.
this was about your trip to the Soviet Union and the difference in how the audience reacted in the States to your performance and the performance that you had in Russia.
Well, in my opinion, a great artist is going to almost elicit the same reaction anywhere in the world. But the Russians are very passionate, but they're much more, in a way, they're a little bit more reserved physically getting involved in the concert. In the States, they'll scream and yell and throw underwear on the stage. You know, I'm just kidding, but I mean, they really go nuts here. But I think the audiences in Russia have been, they're very cultivated and they love the art. They love concert music. The States, you know, it's still a backwater culturally. I mean, you've got a lot of people that just don't like classical music or serious music, but some places that's the only music they like, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it all started in Germany, and I mean, that's the Germans, come on, Beethoven, Brahms, Schumann, everybody wonders why the greatest music came out of Germany. I don't know. I
Yeah.
mean, you can't beat those composers.
Yeah,
Bach,
it's definitely the water.
Mozart.
So my next podcast is going to be on classical music. So I think we're definitely going to have you on again to just chat about that, chat about new artists, chat about some of
I'll
these
give you a
wonderful recordings. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll give you a name, Natasha Korsakova. You should listen to her. She's a great violinist. I just thought of her, and since you're an aficionado and a buff, I think you would really enjoy her playing. It's some of the greatest music making ever.
Well, I'm going to get that link from you. Jascha Heifetz is my number one violinist.
Listen to her.
Even when he's an old chap playing at Carnegie Hall with a broken elbow, just the sound of that man is just
I know,
wonderful.
Yeah, actually, Bill Judd was his manager. My manager was his road manager.
Wow. Okay.
So I met Mrs. Heifetz once. Interesting.
Okay.
Yeah.
we'll definitely have it in Palm Beach. Palm Springs.
Yes, Palm Springs.
Okay,
she lived in Palm Springs.
Okay.
Interesting lady.
We're definitely going to have a chat about that at a later stage. Jack, it's been a real privilege speaking to you,
Nicholas,
and we could have gone on for hours and hours. But I don't think the listeners would manage. But
I really appreciate your knowledge in this area. It's great. Cool. Terrific.
Well, great chatting to you, and I'm sure we'll have you back on again. And I'd love to talk about some more artist management or music management, and see what we can do to help some of these artists of yours really build their brands and get out there without having to spend $5 to $10 million.
Yeah, we can get into much more detail. This was sort of like an overview. Yeah, I get it.
Great.
Sure. Okay.
Thanks, Jack.
Okay, thank you, Nicholas.
Come chat with Nicholas. He'll listen to you, then he'll laugh, and then he'll cry with you. It's all in a safe space for you to speak your truth.